Hey, what is up everyone? My name is Ryan Tusher, and today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the movie Back to the Future Part 1, and we're going to be looking at 7 different categories of media aesthetics and how they help make the film very successful. Alright, so let's start off with an introduction to the film. The premise of the movie is that Marty McFly, originally from 1985, goes back in time to 1955 in a DeLorean time machine, and get ready for it, has to go back to the future. Amazing, right? He meets up with the past version of Dr. Emmett Brown, and together they fix the past that Marty messes up whenever he arrives, and also helps to repair the DeLorean so Marty can make it home safely. Okay, and here's some cool people that helped make the film. The movie is directed by Robert Zemeckis. The cinematographer for the movie was Dean Cundey. The music for the film was made by Alan Silvestri, and the editing for the film was done by Harry Karamitis and Arthur Schmidt. Alright, so with introductions out of the way, let's get to our first category. Okay, so for our first category we have lighting, and our first aesthetic within that is the day and night. This is used to help audiences know kind of what time it is in the world. So when it's morning time, they have a lot of light coming in from the outside through the windows, through the door frame. Whenever Marty walks in, you can see the long shadows from his legs as he's walking in. And then for the night scenes, at about 18 minutes whenever he's in his room, the only light comes from the lamps beside his bed. Everything else is really dark. And then whenever they're outside at night, everything is really, really dark except for like the lights being illuminated by the street lights. Alright, and so for our second media aesthetic, I was gonna go with high key lighting, but I think it's actually intense key lighting. Because whenever the DeLorean travels through time, it has this really, really big flash of light, and like it fills the frame with light, but it doesn't really fill the entire like surrounding area with light. It just kind of fills in the characters and like the land right around them and everything. So I'm going with intense key light, and this is used just to show how much power the DeLorean has, and that it has to create this really big explosion of light, and it kind of just, you know, I don't know, kind of helps to give and sell the effect that this car really is traveling through time. Okay, and so for our third media aesthetic, we have fast and slow fall off. During the whole movie, typically they'll use like slow fall off. You can see this at like 5:14 or any of the other clips that I am showing. Basically the whole movie is kind of really softly lit and just, you know, very even, makes it very easy to watch, except for a couple times whenever the movie's getting kind of very intense. Marty realizes that he has changed the past, which then affects the future or the present, and he's learning that he is going to be disappearing soon. So they use some really fast fall off to really put some intense shadows on the characters' faces, and you can see that about 55 minutes into the film. And yeah, it's a very cool technique to be able to show how intense something is in a movie. Alright, those were all of our lighting aesthetics. Let's go to color now. Okay, so for our next category we have color, and within this category our first aesthetic is hues. Most of the buildings in the background and everything are more of like a brown, kind of like a muted colors, but all of the important people in cars and buildings are wearing more like vivid outfits and more vivid hues. And it helps them to stand out from the background and helps the viewer to be able to easily see them, and makes it easier to watch. Okay, so our next term is color energy. Whenever Marty arrives in 1955, one of the first couple scenes is he's driving down this like 2-lane road. He parks there and he gets out of the car in like this big open field, and the colors there are very warm, and it kind of helps to portray that it's still warm even though it's in the fall. And it also kind of helps to give this kind of warm feeling about the movie in general. The entire film has kind of a warm feeling, but you can definitely see it whenever he's in the field. So our final aesthetic for color is color harmony. In the movie, Marty wears like a red jacket most of the time, so whenever he's in front of like the grass or like trees or whatever, which are green, he stands out and is very easy to see. This color combination is called color harmony, and is also one way to make two colors work together best. Okay, so our third category is 2D field, and our first aesthetic for this one is motion vectors. So whenever Marty is going to the past, he ends up going to the left, and then whenever he goes to the future, he ends up going to the right. And this helps us to visualize kind of like, we always assume left is kind of backwards, so he goes to the left to go to the past, and we always assume to the right is kind of, you know, going up the number scale and everything, so when he goes to the future, he goes to the right. It's kind of something that like helps to clarify some stuff for the viewer, and also makes it, you know, a little bit subconsciously easier to watch. Okay, so our next media aesthetic is headroom. Whenever Marty and Biff are in like a confrontation, Biff is always a little bit taller than Marty, and his headroom is very, very little, and it really draws his head and his whole body kind of up to the ceiling of the frame, the top of the frame, and that makes him feel way bigger than Marty. And then whenever he exceeds the frame and goes way out of frame like this, he seems like way taller than Marty, and just like a really big force. He has a lot of strength and everything, and it kind of shows Marty as the little underdog, weakling kind of guy. All right, and our final media aesthetic for 2D field is the moving camera. Going back to the scene where Marty is in the field and he parks the DeLorean for the first time, he gets out and this moving camera goes around and kind of tracks him as he gets out and pans to this really big field. And it really just shows you how open of an area it was back in 1955, whereas now it's all homes and suburbs and everything like that. And this just really helps to give you a sense of scale for where he is in the world and how much has changed in 30 years. All right, now on to our next category, which is 3D field. Okay, so now we're in 3D field for our category, and our first media aesthetic is linear perspective. Whenever George and Marty are getting hit by the car, you can see these nice leading lines straight down the middle of the frame that go to the edge of it. And there's also some cars that are parked along there. And this really helps to show the distance that the car is, like away and everything, and kind of help exaggerate how far it is and how fast it's moving at the two characters. And it also is just a really nice scene to look at. Okay, so our next media aesthetic is rack focus. Rack focus is whenever you are changing your focal plane from like something, like let's say like the background to something in like the foreground. And it really helps to clarify to the audience what they should be looking at so that they can follow the story, and you can also get to do a little bit less cutting and everything. Alright, so our final media aesthetic for this 3D field category is digital video effects. Whenever the DeLorean is teleporting through time, to help sell that to the viewer, they have gone through and added some special effects to make it seem like there's other things happening and like sparks and blue streaks and everything. That way, whenever you see it happening, you go, wow, that car really is teleporting and stuff like that. And it also kind of helps to intensify the movie and everything, make it, you know, a little bit cooler to watch. Okay, so now we have made it to the 4D field category. Our first media aesthetic in this category is lateral motion. Whenever the DeLorean is gaining speed to reach 88 so it can actually like go through time and teleport, they have to exaggerate the motion, and to do this they use long shots and they use really wide close-up shots. So that way like the background's moving really fast and it kind of exaggerates the speed and intensifies how fast the car is going when it's probably only going like 45 miles an hour. Okay, so our next media aesthetic for the 4D field is storytime and runtime. The storytime takes place over like 8 days, I believe, and the entire runtime of the movie is about an hour and 55 minutes. So to do this, they show about a quarter of the movie is whenever he's in 1985, and then the rest of the movie is when he's in 1955, and the difference in time kind of allows them to split up different times in the movie and exaggerate different parts. And also sometimes there's like days where like only one thing happens, and then there's days where like 3 things happen. And so to do this, they are able to kind of change what parts of the days are longer and kind of keep your focus and not make it too slow or too long. Right, so for our final aesthetic for the 4D field, we have secondary motion. Secondary motion is the movement of the camera, and man, does this camera move a lot during this film. It's really good though, because it kind of helps to keep the movie kind of alive and feel kind of energetic and like lifelike, whereas if it was much of like static shots, sometimes that can get really boring, and so this really helps to kind of draw in action and make everything smooth and just, you know, keep you entertained for about 2 hours. Alrighty, we have arrived at the sound category now. For our first one, we have ambient sounds. During the entire movie, you can hear a lot of ambient sounds. If they're outside, there's a lot of like people talking, or there's like birds chirping.
It's just an act, right? Okay, so 9 o'clock, you're strolling through the parking lot. You see us,
Or if he's like inside, you can hear like the individual like clock ticks of stuff, or like, you know, other things like going on. It has a lot of great ambient sounds, and it really helps to keep the viewer engaged and make it feel like they're actually in the movie. And for our second media aesthetic in the sound category, we have source connected sounds. The film does a really good job of whenever someone is talking to show that character. This really helps us to put kind of a face to a sound. That way later, if they are talking and we can't see them necessarily, we're able to visualize them, and it really helps the viewer to be engaged and feel like they're actually in the room with the characters. Alright, and for our final media aesthetic in the sound category, we have dialogue. This movie is full of dialogue. The story is progressed through dialogue. The characters will be like, well, you messed up the time continuum because you did this and you did that, and it is very nice to be able to hear someone say that, and it helps you to kind of follow along more easily whenever a character tells you what is happening in the film. And there's also kind of a little bit of banter and some comedy and everything, and so dialogue is a very important part of this movie. Alright, we've arrived at our final category. This is editing, and for our first term here we have converging index vectors. Whenever two characters are talking in a scene, they are converging because they're obviously talking to each other. However, when they're also in like their single shot, they're still looking in the same direction as they were, you just can't see the other person, and it really helps you to feel like you understand where the characters are in space, and it really helps to kind of make sure the viewer knows where people are looking, and hey, they're still talking to Lorraine, because I can tell because their index vectors are still converging based on the two scenes that they're in separately. Our next media aesthetic term is continuing motion vectors. Whenever Biff is chasing Marty through the streets of downtown, let's say they're going to the right and everything, they will continue going to the right until they go straight at the camera, in which case they will turn to the left, let's say, and it does a really good job of helping you to understand that they are still in motion and that they're still going in the same direction. They're not just like all of a sudden flipping the camera around and you're like, where is he going? I thought he was going to the left, I thought he was going to the right. I don't even know where he's going. They do a really good job of saying, okay, he's still in motion, and it helps you to kind of follow him along downtown and know where he is on the street. Alright, so for our final category here, we have mental map. The movie does a really good job of letting us know where characters are in a scene. Shots don't really jump around the room, they're kind of in very specifically chosen locations, and this helps to really, one, make the movie a little bit neater and a little bit easier to watch, and also so that way we know where characters are when they're off screen, so we have an idea of what is happening around the characters that are on screen, and it makes it just easier to watch in general. Alright, well, thank you guys very much for watching that video and sticking with me through all this. That was 21 different media aesthetic terms in 7 different categories. Hopefully you were able to learn why Back to the Future Part 1 is a good movie, great movie even, and how you can apply these aesthetics to your own videos to make them even better. If you enjoyed the video, hit like. If you want to see more content, hit subscribe and leave a comment down below just about your day or whatever. Let's have a chat. Other than that, have a fantastic day, and I'll see you guys next time. See ya.